The Miami Dolphins are coming off Monday night's 23-15 victory over the Los Angeles Rams and facing this week's opponent, the Las Vegas Raiders. A lot of teams that used to be in LA who've moved around. 2-7. The Dolphins have one more victory than the Raiders. I always find it interesting that one team is circling the drain and one team is in the playoff hunt. We happen to cover the team that's in the playoff hunt. Omar Kelly here, Miami Dolphins columnist for the Miami Herald, joined by Barry Jackson, man of mystery, man of many, many beats. Barry, we've had a very complicated week with the Miami Dolphins this week from the standpoint of I don't know how many teams cut a captain, add a linebacker, lose a starting cornerback to a second concussion. What else have we had going on this week, Barry?
Oh, we've had Jalen Ramsey giving us a scare with a knee injury that apparently isn't a scare. He's going to play. We have Teron Armstead, where the Dolphins snuck him in on the injury report Wednesday and Thursday saying rest/knee. And then today he doesn't practice. And then that would make him unavailable to speak to us. So he's listed as questionable for Sunday. There's some questions about Teron. He has been able to play certain weeks without practicing at all. If he does it on Sunday, it will be without a single minute of practice. And he'll have to face Max Crosby and others on Sunday without practice this week. But if there's a guy that can do it, you would think it's Teron.
Definitely. I would feel very uncomfortable going into that game without Teron. We've also got Rob Jones with an injury. He's battling a knee issues. He's also listed as questionable. He's been limited all week. We already know Kendall Lamb is going to be in there as a starting right tackle, replacing Austin Jackson.
Right tackle. Exactly, who is out for the year after knee surgery. So God forbid if they're without both their tackles against the Raiders on Sunday. I'm cautiously optimistic about Teron. Patrick Paul obviously would have to step in if Teron cannot play, and Patrick Paul is now the backup at right tackle as well. He's been cross-training there. But, yeah, really eventful week. Alec Ingold, by the way, questionable for Sunday. The calf has not recovered as quickly as everyone would have liked, so we'll see if he can play on Sunday. Yeah, any soft tissue injuries, McDaniel said today, is going to be an issue. Yeah. By the way, before we get into the game and all the news this week, there are three players who could return this week. McDaniel said probably none of them will. Patrick McMorris, he's got another week left on his clock. Isaiah Wynn, who just began practicing this week. He was a limited participant the last couple of days. As you noted, Omar, Dolphins are going to need to give him time to recover from the quad and the knee injuries that have sidelined him all year. And then the other player who's eligible to return, who does not look likely to yet, is Blake Ferguson, who's been out for personal reasons. He's been with the team. We've seen him in the locker room the last 2 weeks. We're not allowed to talk to him. So he's around. He could be activated at any time, but McDaniel said it's unlikely he'll be activated this week. He said he does expect him to long snap for the team this year. So those are the three guys who are sort of sitting on ice who aren't going to be brought back this weekend.
Yeah, I think we got to worry about the players that are here, that are available. There are a number of guys, as when you approach November, December, they're just about everybody's battling something. You'd love to have your quarterback healthy, and the Miami Dolphins do. But then you've got Tyreek. Obviously, he's on the injury report with, the wrist injury now, full participant today. Last week, he was a little bit of a mystery. Tyreek is Tyreek, so you never know what to expect, but I think he's going to be active. We also have to address this narrative or story or concern, and our colleague Isaiah Smalls is writing about it. Any concern, fear, worry that Tyreek and Jalen won't get it going at some point this season?
Oh, it has to be, Omar. I mean, we've seen no evidence this season that it's going to get turned around, and it's the great mystery of this season. How teams for years and years could play two high safeties and in recent years could jam receivers at the line of scrimmage, and yet some of the best offenses in the league are still able to overcome that. You're still able to see Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and others get past those issues and still produce. So it's mystifying, as good as Tyreek is, that the Dolphins haven't been able to solve either issue of two high safeties, limiting what they do, or pressing at the line of scrimmage, being physical with Waddle and with Hill. So why is this offense not better? Why has the deep ball completely been eliminated? I know it doesn't worry you as much as it worries me, but the fact that the Dolphins are last in the league in plays of 20-plus yards is stunning for a team that has the two highest paid receivers in the league and for a team that has built its whole reputation around beating teams deep. And I just can't believe that Frank Smith, when I asked him last week, I said, can you win as much as you want, score as much as you want if you don't have deep balls at all? And he said, yes, if we're consistently effective in building drives. I don't buy that at all, because you know there's going to be a penalty, there's going to be a fumble, there's going to be something that is going to stop some of these drives, as we've seen, even in them scoring 25 to 30 the last 3 weeks, which is acceptable. But we've seen drive-stopping things, whether it's a sack, whether it's a penalty, whether it was a Mostert fumble. So they do need the deep ball back. Tyreek being 48th in yards, the two of them having only 3 touchdowns combined, is unfathomable to me. It's unfathomable and it's unacceptable, and they all have to fix it. Am I overreacting?
I think you are slightly overreacting. We've seen them be one of the biggest play-producing offenses in the NFL, so it's not like Tua can't throw it. Teams are saying beat us with everybody but Tyreek. Tyreek, I'm not necessarily worried about. Now, I would have liked and have asked for and have seen more usage of him as a slot receiver. That is, I think we can continue to emerge and get more out of that. We've seen the elevation of Malik Washington. We've seen the improvement of Odell Beckham. So we're getting more from the third receiver. I'm more concerned about why are we getting more from Jalen Waddle? Because there's not going to be many opportunities where you're getting cloud coverage for both of these wide receivers. So somebody is open. And I would agree with Tua. He's throwing to the open man. If teams are going to give you a wide open man in the flat, take the wide open man in the flat. And that's what Tua's doing. And Tua's completing. What is he completing? Good God. It's like nearly 70% of his passes. So it's not like he's like throwing.
Second behind only Stafford.
Yeah.
He's like 73 for 94 since coming back. He's been outstanding. But with Waddle, I guess you could say he's been the biggest disappointment of the season. We both like Jalen, but it's just puzzling why there hasn't been more production, why no more consistency, why no deep balls to Waddle at all for touchdowns this year, why the occasional drops, including one that could have been costly on Monday night. You just like more consistency for the type of talent he is, for the salary he's making. I'm sure it's eating at him. He spoke to reporters today. He talked about some of the frustration. He's being a good team guy about it. But at some point, when you move on from Tyreek, whether it's in 2 or 3 years because of age or contract or whatever, Waddle's going to have to be your number one. And I know you've made the point that there is a huge gap between what Jamar Chase is and what Jalen Waddle is. Obviously, you can see the physical differences in them. But eventually, Waddle's going to have to be that number one receiver because Tyreek at 30 isn't going to be here forever. He's not going to be affordable for the Dolphins forever. So Waddle at some point is going to have to step up and be that guy. The question is he capable of it? This wasn't a question that either of us would be asking the last 2 years. It's only come up this year because of the lack of production, not all of which is his fault, obviously, and just the unevenness in the play. There's not been a play this year from Jalen Waddle where you can say, you know what, that's a difference-making play. That's why you have the 2 highest-paid receivers in the league, because Jalen Waddle can do that and very few others can't. I haven't said that a single time this season. And again, it's not all Waddle's fault, but you have to see that production at some point to justify having the highest-paid receiver combo in the league.
I don't disagree with you. And as I said, I'm putting more of the shoulders of blame on Jalen Waddle because we do see the drops. At this point, I'd make him my number one primary weapon and leave Tyreek, especially with the wrist injury, as my decoy and see what Jalen Waddle can do. There's a reason he's making nearly $21 million a year. Like, you need to get that kind of production out of him. But as Tua said, I'm throwing to the open man. And right now, you're seeing very effective passing game. Devon Achane is leading the team in receptions with 42. You're seeing Jonnu Smith come alive. He's having a what could be on verge of a career season. So I'm not going to sit here and argue that they should be throwing the ball deep, because I think the offense is efficient. When your quarterback's completing 72% of his passes, you're doing pretty all right in the passing game. When you're efficient in the third downs, you're doing all right in the passing game. It's just we're missing that big strike. But I also believe that if your run game was better or a little bit more consistent, you would have that big strike. And that's everything. Everything works in concert. And I do believe we saw the run game get stifled against the Rams. I believe it was 62 yards on 22 carries. My concern with that moving forward, I thought the Rams did a phenomenal job in terms of how their defensive line played. I don't think they get the praise that they deserve because that was one hell of a performance. But I am starting to see the watering down of the offensive line. And it's not necessarily because of all the injuries, but it's when players are playing with ailments and issues, Barry, you're not exactly getting the most optimal performance out of them. Now we've got Tehran. We've got Robert Jones with his own knee issue. Then we've got, Kendall Lamb out there, making his second start of the season. There's a little bit of drop off. Now, my hope is that we ran for a second best rushing attack in the NFL last year with backups all over the offensive line. Now, that was with Raheem Mostert as the lead back. And I'm not arguing that Raheem should be the lead back because Raheem is in the doghouse right now. He's getting a pow-pow from Mike McDaniel. You fumbled the ball twice. You've lost 2 games for this team. These are facts, Barry.
Well, I talked to him today, Omar, and he admitted that he was down about not getting a carry. He said he's met with McDaniel and discussed it. He said it was a good meeting. He doesn't want to talk about what was discussed. But he said to me, and I was talking to him alone today, he said to me, I would have reacted the same way as the Dolphins in terms of not playing me, which shocked me. That was an incredible admission by a really classy guy. I said, did the Dolphins tell you that the fumbles were the reason that you didn't get a carry Monday for the first time in your career? He said, they didn't tell me that, but it's clear to me that was the reason. He said he's been given no indication if he's going to be involved in the running game moving forward. He said obviously he'd like to be, but he's handling it really, really well. But he's on double secret probation, as you said. And it became clear to everyone it's not so secret anymore because he only got 8 snaps on Monday. He had 2 meaningful catches, right, for the 34 yards, but no carries. I'm with you. You don't necessarily have to start him, but I do think you have to play him, right? As you've told me repeatedly, he's one of the best downhill runners you have seen. He warrants carries. And maybe that slap on the wrist on Monday, that should be enough. Give the guy 5 to 10 carries on Sunday. There's no indication he can't resume being what he was. And also, he's going to be extra careful taking care of the ball now. If he fumbles again, I don't think people will be shocked, but I'll be surprised because he's going to be aware of this issue moving forward.
I want to address this, Barry, because we can deal with this with a little bit of David Long. We can deal with this a little bit of Julian Hill. We can deal with this with Raheem. I have even mocked Mike McDaniel for being Mr. Buddy Buddy. And, we wonder if the team responds to him and his hard coaching or critical coaching when there are no consequences to actions and bad performances and things of that nature. But now we see, this team is getting tough. They demoted David Long. That was big.
Yes.
That was a captain.
And Mostert, that disproves that perception, Omar, right? There are consequences now. There are consequences, and that's probably a good thing.
Do you think the release of David Long, because it wasn't just the benching. We got 2 weeks of the benching. The defense has responded with Anthony Walker as the starter. And then we get to, we're going to cut David Long, a team captain. Players were like, we've never seen that done before. A captain gets released from the team. Nobody picks him up. So this isn't like we're trying to skirt out of our financial responsibilities because now, Barry, they are on the hook for paying his salary for the remainder of the season. And then a player called me today and we were talking and he's like, oh no, David Long gets to double dip. I got to check this with my agent friends, but there is a one-time ability for a player who is released, who is not claimed, to sign a new contract and get both contracts because his contract with the Dolphins is guaranteed, and whoever signs him, let's say they want to have him play for the playoffs, he's going to get both salaries. This is not what it's about. Do you think that the release of David Long was a message being sent? Because both you and I know David Long is better than Channing Tindall.
Yes. I don't know that it was a message. I just think they thought that they would be better off with Terrell Dotson than David Long. But I do agree with you on the general point, which is that there's been a clear shift. There are consequences now. People have to worry about keeping their job. Another example for you. Julian Hill has to worry now that Jack Stahl, the tight end who was claimed off waivers from Philadelphia, he could come in and take some of his snaps, right? Maybe players who didn't have to worry about things as much now have to. It's been more of a meritocracy over the last month in terms of the best players, the best performers in practice, getting a chance to play, which I think is a good thing. We've seen that also, Omar, with Malik Washington. He has consistently played more than Odell Beckham every single game that Malik has been active over the last month, and it's because he deserves it. He's earned it. So I think this is a good thing. As far as the Dotson David Long thing, Dotson made clear to us that he's going to back up Anthony Walker, so it's unlikely he's going to play much on defense unless there's an injury to Anthony Walker, unless he's ineffective. He'll obviously play on special teams. But with Long, it's just stunning how it's gone from best linebacker, inside linebacker in the league against the run last year to gone from the team completely. And obviously, playing the pass was always a shortcoming for him. But I think what really hurt him was that Arizona game. It was a total debacle for him, and they lost. And also, the dominant play against the run wasn't quite as dominant. So in this era of throwing, obviously, if you're not very good against the pass and your run defense goes from elite to average to pretty good, you're going to have a hard time finding a job in the league. So all the best to David Long with that. But it was interesting. They opted for Long over Channing Tindall, who has not played a single defensive snap this year.
Barry, yes, Barry.
Who has special team value, I guess, Tindall.
Right? I am not a conspiracy theorist. Yes, I am. I'm lying. Channing Tindall, we both know, has no business really being here. From a talent standpoint, from a contribution standpoint, maybe he's a better special teams player than David Long. Channing Tindall probably will never have the career that David Long has. What happens if something happens to one of your starters? Are you ever going to go to Channing Tindall? I would say no. So why release David Long when you're going to have to pay his contract when you could have just released Channing Tindall?
Right. I would have kept David Long, too, because you just never know what's going to happen. Anthony Walker's had a history of injuries. So I think it would have been far safer to hold on to David Long. I got to ask you about the other story this week. And I know you wrote a column about it. I talked to several players about it. The Deshaun Elliott comment saying that the majority of players in this year's team were not mentally strong, on last year's team, I should say, and that's saying that this was a bleeping soft team. Obviously, Dolphins players weren't happy about it. Cater Coe, who said, well, he wasn't the toughest guy. William Eichenberg says it says something about a guy's character that he badmouths us after he leaves. Javon Holland said, if you're not going to put a name on it, then don't say it at all. Calais Campbell said, I played with a guy. I like him, but I don't care what he says. It means nothing to me. So did this hit a nerve where you think there was any truth to it? It's clear that Deshaun Elliott was totally out of line saying it, and it's not classy for him to say it. Was
it his truth?
It's never going to help him get another job in the league.
Was it his truth?
But is it? I guess that's the question. And you wrote about this.
Was it his truth? And do other teams talk about it, Barry?
Well, we've heard other players talk about it. We heard Poyer make a reference that wasn't nearly as blunt, right? But when he arrived, he said there was a perception about this team in our locker room. So is there a shred of truth to it? Perhaps. You would be stronger than that, though. See, I hate to say that it's true because to me, them losing late down the stretch last year wasn't a case of mental toughness to me. I want to make this point real quickly, and I want to give you the floor. I'll tell you why. The reason they lost late last year was because the offense couldn't figure out good defenses. Tua's play declined. The defense was totally overwhelmed in Baltimore. They lost all of their good edge rushers, and they had a horrific special teams breakdown at home in Week 18 with the division on the line. So to me, those are tangible things that I can point to for why they went into a swoon down the stretch and unraveled as opposed to mental toughness. There's no tangible way to gauge mental toughness. It's such an intangible, abstract thing that I can't sit here and say it's not a mentally tough team.
Hold on.
Okay, talk to me.
I'm not just blaming it on the closing stretch of the season. The Baltimore game, hell, Channing Good tore his patella on that big special teams play. Xavier Howard busted up his foot on the first snap of the game. Chubb tearing an ACL. There were a number of things that happened that don't have anything to do with toughness or softness, okay? So let's put Baltimore to the side. Then you go into Baltimore and Buffalo and Kansas City. You were not playing at full strength. no Raheem Mostert, no Jalen Waddle, Tyreek on one leg, playing with three backups on your offensive line. Come on, give me a break, okay? I don't care how good Tua plays. He's got no weaponry, no chance. put that to the side. But fourth quarter games against Philadelphia, fourth quarter games against the Chiefs, collapse against Tennessee. Those are all mentally tough moments that you shrunk when you needed to rise to the occasion. And I think
that's fair. I totally agree with you on the Titans game in particular.
Yes, Barry. I'm not a player on that team, but I cover this team. Could I name guys I think are mentally soft? Yes, I could. Will I? I will not. But it's not everywhere. And I think Jalen Ramsey made the team address it at the beginning of training camp. Jordan Poyer called them out at the beginning of training camp. This is not a new topic, but it's also a new team. Now, have they faced moments and opportunities where they have the opportunity this season to show that they were mentally tough? They have, and what have they done, Harry? They rose to the occasion against Jacksonville, and then they shrunk in every other instance when they needed to play big.
But is that just not lack of Tua? I mean, that's just not having an offense or drafting backup quarterback.
What does this have to do with Tua?
I don't think mental toughness has been a factor this year. I think it's been.
Oh, the defense has given it up, Barry. The defense given it up against Arizona? Hasn't the defense given it up against Baltimore?
But why is that mental toughness? See, I'd come back at you and say, I think that's because they didn't have their starting edge rushers on the field with Chubb and Phillips, and they didn't have Zach Sealer. If Zach Sealer plays against Arizona or Buffalo, maybe one play changes and they win those two close games. So to me, I'm only going to accuse guys of lack of mental toughness if I see overt evidence. Like, for example, if you see guys quitting late in games, if you see guys avoiding tackles, it's fine if Tua does that. But if you see anyone else doing that, that to me is mental toughness. But it's hard for me to blame anything that's happened this year on mental toughness. I think it's just mishandling a backup quarterback. The offense hasn't been as good as it should be, and they don't have enough pass rushers, right? I think that to me would be
do me this favor.
You can point to.
Do me this favor. You want tangible evidence? Tell me why they can't convert in fourth and short.
Well, you could say they're perhaps not physical enough, but is that mentally soft? I mean,
that's just he didn't say mentally soft. He just said soft. He didn't describe whether they were mentally soft.
They're interior players. Liam, Rob Jones, Brewer, obviously Brewer in particular. And on the defensive side, Calais and Zach Sealer, no one could say these are soft players. Now, are they good enough at guard? Are they good enough at nose tackle? Absolutely not. But that's more to me a physical toughness issue, not a mental.
He didn't say mental. He just said soft.
No. His comment was that the majority of the players on last year's team were not mentally tough again, but he also said soft. Yes. Is this a team that has the perception of being soft because it's a finesse offense? Yes, that's absolutely fair. But I draw a distinction between that and players being mentally not tough. I'm not going to accuse anyone of being mentally not tough because I didn't see any overt evidence of that. But are they a soft team in terms of is their reputation finesse? That argument can be made even though the players on their lines are not soft per se, right?
I look at it from, and understand, Barry, I come from the background of the University of Miami, and I covered a Hurricanes team that they intimidated everybody when they walked on the field. And this was back in that era, long time ago. They had won the battle before they even stepped onto the field. This is not a Miami Dolphins team that does that. They know that Tua is going to be an efficient quarterback, but do teams fear that Tua is going to stab you in the heart with a dagger? That's not necessarily where teams are coming across. Do they know that they're going to physically maul you in the trenches and absolutely dominate the line of scrimmage? No, that's not exactly who this team is.
That's your best argument. That's your best argument that they're not Baltimore. They're not a team that has a reputation for toughness and physically dominating you. But to me, that's not the players on the team to blame. That's a Chris Greer issue of not constructing a roster.
It could be how it could be how you're built as well. But then your quarterback, Barry, has to have that killer instinct. Tua has to want blood. Tua has to see, and I'm not saying that he doesn't play like that at times, because I think that there are instances, there are fourth quarter games where he pulls off the victory or he gets the team to lead, and then the defense just gives it up. And I think that nobody ever counts those because they don't view them as kills or win opportunities. But teams will begin to fear the Dolphins when you have the feeling like you have when Josh Allen gets the ball or Patrick Mahomes gets the ball with 2 minutes left and you're down by 3.
Yeah, but that's just not being good enough to be at that level. I mean, he's a good quarterback, but he's not at the Josh Allen Mahomes level, obviously. So to me, that's a talent issue, not a mentality or killer instinct issue. I don't think Tua lacks a killer instinct. I just think he has physical limitations that obviously Josh Allen doesn't have, right? So that's naturally going to make Josh Allen more able and Mahomes more able to pull off the type of things that Tua has so far been unable to pull off. So I don't want to say that Tua lacks killer instinct. I just think he's not as good as the other guys. No?
No, I think he can. I still believe that he has moments where he shows it, and it has to become more consistent. If I had to give Tua one criticism of this season, he has not killed. He has not put a team away, and he's done that going back to last season, where teams are hanging around, and he's like, you know what, let me take this third down drive and let me push this thing into the end zone. It just hasn't happened yet. It could. I'm still waiting for it, but everything else has to be good around him. The protection against the Rams was horrible last week. It was absolutely horrible. And I think it might have been one of his best performances ever because he was scrambling everywhere and avoiding contact, avoiding hits, and throwing down third down completions. That, to me, is an elevation of his game. But you have to put that with the running game. You have to put that with Tyreek breaking a tackle, taking it downfield. You have to put that with efficient offense where there's no penalties. You have to put that with everything together, and it has to be perfect. And unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. But then defensively, when you give them a lead, you know what a physical tough team does?
What?
They put their foot on your neck. And I do expect this Dolphins defense. I want to apologize because they were not at full strength. They did not have Zach Sealer and Kader Kohu and Javon Holland when they gave up the booty to Arizona and to Buffalo. They did not have 3 valuable starters, so more props to them. And earlier in the season, they were the number 1 third down team in the NFL. Third down is my critical, important down. But then again, do you scare anybody because you're not getting any pressure? You have the second few sacks in the NFL. Well, I don't know if they still do have the second few sacks in the NFL. But
Chop's play's been encouraging the last couple of weeks. It's not only the 2 sacks, but he had 6 pressures last week. The question is, are you going to get enough beyond Chop? Ogba's been a real trooper playing through the biceps injury, but obviously he's not giving you the pass rush that he typically does if he were healthy. Quentin Bell, we had a Quentin Bell moment. Mr. August came through with a sack last week, but can we get more of that? Kamara, I don't think is going to be a factor. Tyus Bowser has not been a factor at all. So to me, that's still the biggest question on this roster. That plus, as you said, will the diminishment along the offensive line, just sort of the battles of war over a full season, will that leave them in a position like they were on Monday, where the offensive line just was not nearly as good on Monday as it had been, neither in the run game nor in protecting Tua? Maybe Isaiah Wynn's going to walk through that door in a week or two and give him a boost at left guard, but that's really the only person coming back who's going to be able to help you among the guys who are left. Even if Chubb comes back, what's realistic to expect from him? I thought it was very telling that McDaniel said this week that Cam Good is ahead of Chubb, but that neither is ready to practice. So if Chubb is not cleared to practice until, I don't know, after Thanksgiving, and he comes back for the last 2 or 3 games of the season, how is he going to respond after being sidelined for a year off the ACL? Is this basically what they have as far as pass rushers, and they just have to somehow make the most of it and somehow win 7 of their last 9?
I think Cameron Good is better than Quentin Bell, and I think that he's probably going to be elevated maybe next week, the week after that. I think he is closer. I've noticed them. He looks and appears to be closer. There's a certain level of ramping up that I saw them start to do with Isaiah Wynn, and they start to do that with Cameron Good. So we're going to see if he's close. And I think that the bodies can help, the waves can help. But and I think Chop Robinson gaining more experience or finding his comfort zone. He's rushing a little bit more wide 9-esque. That's helping him. I would love for them to get an extra edge rusher so that Chop can move around and pick where he's going to attack from, and they can do stunts and things like that. But when you don't have the personnel, you can't do those things. So right now,
and clearly this team could not find an edge rusher before the trade deadline and didn't want to spend the draft picks to get one. There's another position you and I have to touch on, cornerback. I asked today with Kendall Fuller, I said, have doctors indicated if he has to miss as much time as Tua did, because he did have the second concussion in 2 months? McDaniel said the indication is that we don't have to table him for a month like we did with Tua. So maybe he misses 2 weeks. Maybe he's back next week. Regardless, here's my question to you. Cam Smith has been targeted incessantly by Kyler Murray, Matt Stafford, Josh Allen, not in that order. He's been targeted 15 times. He's given up 13 completions in those 15 attempts and a touchdown. He's been around the ball some. It's not like he's been miles from the receiver, but he hasn't made enough plays. He told me this week his technique has to get better. Here's my question. Do you stick with him on Sunday at boundary when you go 3 corner sets with Kohu and Ramsey, or do you give Storm Duck a chance? I know you're going to say you don't give Ethan Bonner a chance because you're not a huge Ethan Bonner fan, I don't think. Do you give Saran Neal a chance? Saran Neal played 1 snap on Sunday, gave up a 21-yard completion on that snap. Where do you turn? Do you ride it out with Cam Smith and say, he's our second-round pick, he's our guy, we're going to keep putting him out there no matter the results because we need to know what he is, and he is talented?
Exactly, Barry. He is the second-round pick. He looks like an NFL cornerback. And just like Anthony Weaver said, you got to throw these guys in the pool to see if they can swim. And this is Cam Smith. I remember the breaking of Noah Igbenogany. Do you remember the breaking of Noah Igbenogany?
I do. It wasn't pretty.
And it happened against Russell Wilson. And yes, when you're the young, green, inexperienced guy, you will get attacked, and you have to prove that you can play to these NFL quarterbacks. You have to make them pay the consequences of targeting you. Cam Smith hasn't done that yet. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's not going to be able to. He's just got to weather the storm. Now, you brought up the caliber of quarterbacks that he was facing, and that was a pretty decent caliber of quarterbacks. Marvin Allen is no slouch. Marvin Harrison is no slouch. I think that Cam, you have to continue that investment. But then again, with this coaching staff, they go with the top performer. And if Storm Duck outperformed them this week, don't be surprised if you see Storm Duck out there at cornerback. It will not be Saran Neal. But I think I think you have to ride it out with the draft pick as opposed to the undrafted rookie, because you viewed him as a top 50 talent, which is why you selected him in the second round. You need to show that you are good at your job. And this isn't a coaching issue. It's, did you select the right talent?
Yes.
Did you select the right player that can help you? And in fact, I'm writing about that in terms of these draft picks, because when you look at what's here, there are 21 draft picks on this team, Barry. And I believe there are 14 of them that are starters. I would probably tell you, of the 14 of them that are starters, maybe 5 are good quality starters that will be starting for other NFL teams. Is that how I want my team to draft? You got to do better. And
fascinating. Yeah. I was going to make the point about evaluation of corners is just so difficult.
Evaluation of corners is what?
Evaluation of corner. I'm sorry, I got jammed there a little bit. Evaluation of corners is just so difficult. You look at, they've had more success with undrafted guys, with Needham a few years ago and with Kader Kohu, than they've had with high picks like Cam Smith to this point and Noah. Not everyone can be like Quentin Mitchell, who was selected right after Chop Robinson by Philadelphia. He's been terrific for the Eagles this year. He played at Toledo. Cam Smith played much higher level competition, but Mitchell so far has been the much better player. So it's just really tough to evaluate corners, even if they have the size and the measurables Cam Smith does. Even if you have great competition, you just don't know what they're going to be. And that's why you see guys come in like Kader Kohu from Commerce, Texas A&M Commerce, sometimes have more success than guys drafted in the first or second round. It's just a really difficult spot to evaluate.
Yeah, you have to have the right mentality, and I agree with Weaver. You got to be able to flush those bad plays and move on. So hopefully Cam Smith can do that, because he will definitely be targeted by Gardner Minshew and the Las Vegas Raiders, and it'll be interesting to see what the outcome of that game will be. So Barry, let me get your prediction for Sunday's game. Miami Dolphins hosting the Las Vegas Raiders.
Dolphins 27, Raiders 10. Raiders worst in the league running the ball. They're starting Minshew, who's had a very uneven season. He lost his job to Aiden O'Connell. I think this is the week they put together a really good game. They get to 4-6, then you take care of business against New England. You're sitting there at 5-6 going into Green Bay. Hopefully they won't lay an egg on Thanksgiving night, but I think this gets them closer to 500. How about you?
Yeah, I think that this is going to be the performance where they actually put it all together if the offensive line can hold up. all bets are off if the offensive line, if we see a bad game for Teron Armstead, his first of the season, then I would be really concerned. But I think the Dolphins are going to be able to pull out a 24-17 victory against the Las Vegas Raiders. My hope is that some of this offensive line you got to hold the line, Barry. You got to hold the line. I've seen too many Dolphins seasons fall apart because of offensive line play and offensive line injuries, and hopefully this won't be another one because you're barely holding it together as is. On that note, thank you for watching Dolphins in Depth. We will be back Monday to give you a recap of what actually happened in Sunday's game.